Welcome back to Libertarianism 101. So far, we've covered what libertarianism is, the non-aggression principle, and answered the "what about the roads" questions. But here's something important you need to know. Not all libertarians agree on everything. In fact, libertarianism is more like a spectrum than a single ideology. And today, we're going to map out that spectrum so you can understand the different flavors of libertarian thought and maybe figure out where you fit. Let's start with the big picture. When most people think about politics, they think left versus right, Democrats versus Republicans, liberals versus conservatives. But libertarianism doesn't fit neatly into that model. We're not on the left-right line. We're on a different axis altogether. Think of it like a graph. The traditional left-right axis is about economic policy. But there's another axis, personal freedom versus government control. Libertarians are on the maximum freedom end of both axes, economic freedom and personal freedom. But within libertarianism itself, there's a range. On one end, you have people who want almost no government. We call them Anarcho-Capitalists or Voluntarists. On the other end, you have people who want a very small, limited government. We call them Minarchists or classical liberals, and there's a whole spectrum in between. Let me break this down. Let's start at the most moderate end, classical liberals. These are people like the Founding Fathers, Thomas Jefferson, James Madison. They believed in constitutional limits on government, separation of powers, individual rights, and free markets. But they still wanted a government to protect those rights. Courts, police, military, maybe some basic infrastructure. Classical liberals are okay with some government, as long as it's strictly limited and protects liberty. Many people who call themselves libertarian today are actually classical liberals. They want to shrink government dramatically, but not eliminate it entirely. Moving along the spectrum, you get to minarchists. The term comes from minimal and archy, meaning rule. Minarchists want the absolute minimum government possible, just enough to protect rights and nothing more. They usually say government should only do three things: military for national defense, police to protect against crime, and courts to resolve disputes. That's it. Everything else, education, healthcare, welfare, roads, regulations, should be private. Minarchists believe government is a necessary evil, but it should be as small as humanly possible. Now we're getting to the more radical end of the spectrum, Anarcho-Capitalists. These folks say even that minimal government is too much. They believe all government is inherently aggressive because it's funded by taxation, which they see as theft. Anarcho-Capitalists think everything government does, including defense, police, and courts, could be handled by private, voluntary institutions, private security firms instead of police, private arbitration instead of courts, private defense agencies instead of a military. They believe in absolute free markets and zero government. Every interaction should be voluntary. Related to anarcho-capitalists are voluntarists. They're similar, but they emphasize the moral aspect even more. Voluntarists believe that all human interactions should be voluntary and that initiating force is always wrong, even for things like national defense. They're basically anarcho-capitalists with an even stronger emphasis on the non-aggression principle as a moral absolute. But wait, there's another dimension to this spectrum: Left-Libertarians versus Right-Libertarians. This isn't about Democrats and Republicans, it's about different emphases within libertarian thought. Right-Libertarians tend to focus heavily on property rights, free markets, and capitalism. They're very concerned about economic freedom, and often come from a background of conservative economics or Austrian economics. They talk a lot about entrepreneurship, wealth creation, and getting government out of the economy. Think Ron Paul, Ludwig von Mises, or Murray Rothbard. Left-libertarians also believe in freedom and oppose government force, but they're more skeptical of concentrated wealth and corporate power. They emphasize that libertarianism isn't just about being pro-business. It's about being pro-freedom for everyone, especially workers and marginalized groups. They point out that many big corporations benefit from government favoritism, subsidies, and regulations that hurt small competitors. They might support things like worker cooperatives, unions, as long as they're voluntary, and decentralized economies. Left-Libertarians are often called libertarian socialists or market anarchists, though those terms mean different things to different people. Here's the key difference. Right-Libertarians say free markets and property rights lead to prosperity. Left-Libertarians say, sure, but let's make sure we're talking about actual free markets, not corporatism disguised as capitalism. Both oppose government intervention, but they emphasize different aspects of freedom. Then you've got some other categories worth knowing. Geo-libertarians believe in free markets for everything except land, which they think should be commonly owned or taxed differently because nobody created it. Bleeding heart libertarians focus on how libertarian policies can help the poor and disadvantaged. Paleo-libertarians combine libertarian economics with cultural conservatism, and there are libertarians who focus specifically on issues like civil liberties, drug legalization, criminal justice reform, or ending foreign wars. So where do you fit on this spectrum? Here are some questions to ask yourself. Do you think we need any government at all? If yes, you're probably not an anarcho-capitalist. You might be a minarchist or classical liberal. Do you think taxation is theft or a necessary evil for limited government functions? Your answer puts you somewhere on that spectrum. Do you think property rights are absolute, or should there be some consideration for how concentrated wealth affects freedom? That tells you whether you lean more right-libertarian or left-libertarian. Here's what's important to understand. These aren't enemies. These are debates within the same family of ideas. A minarchist and an anarcho-capitalist both oppose the drug war, the surveillance state, foreign interventionism, and excessive taxation. They just disagree on whether we need a night watchman state or can go fully voluntary. A right-libertarian and a left-libertarian both want free markets and oppose government control. They just emphasize different concerns. And here's the beautiful thing about libertarianism. We don't need everyone to agree on the perfect system. Libertarians believe in voluntary association, remember? Different communities could try different approaches. Some people could live in areas with minimal government services and low taxes. Others could form voluntary cooperatives or mutual aid societies. The point is, nobody's forcing anyone into a system they didn't choose. The spectrum also means you can be libertarian without going all the way to anarcho-capitalism. You don't have to believe taxation is always theft to believe it's way too high. You don't have to want zero government to want way less government than we have now. You can be libertarianish or libertarian-leaning. The movement has room for people at different points on the spectrum, all working toward more freedom and less coercion. In the next lesson, we're going to dive deeper into two specific points on this spectrum. Minarchists versus anarcho-capitalists. We'll explore their arguments, their visions for how society would work, and the debates between them. Because understanding these two positions will really help you clarify your own thinking about the proper role or non-role of government. But for now, you understand the libertarian spectrum. It's not one size fits all. It's a range of positions united by a commitment to liberty, voluntary interaction, and opposition to unnecessary government force. Some want to minimize government. Others want to eliminate it. Some emphasize markets. Others emphasize mutual aid. But we're all pulling in the same direction, toward more freedom. If you're finding this series valuable, subscribe and hit the bell, and drop a comment. Where do you think you fall on the libertarian spectrum? Classical liberal, minarchist, anarcho-capitalist? Still figuring it out? Let's discuss. Welcome back to Libertarianism 101. See you in the next lesson.